Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi is on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, and he joins me now. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
You were in the briefing today. Can you help me understand how Rubio and Hegseth explain why this administration quite publicly releases many videos of the initial strikes, but not, and only, the only exception is the video of the second strike that has caused and raised so many questions about the legality? Did they explain that seeming contradiction?
No, and I think that this is, one of those areas where they have a lot of explaining to do, and we should be able to see the video. The American people need to see how lethal force, bordering on a war crime potentially, is being done in their name. And I have to say that their explanation or their justification for not releasing it, namely that they don't want to release, information leading to sources or methods, seems to contradict the release of all the other videos that they've done. And so I think that it's time to release that video so the American people know exactly what's happening and there can be some accountability for what's being done in their name.
Let me ask you this, because the fundamental question about that second strike raised by, as you know, Democrats and Republicans, was striking that boat with deadly force when there were survivors in the water, seemingly, and I haven't seen the video, but by some accounts, simply attempting to survive. Was that legal? Did you hear anything in the briefing that gave you any further clarity as to how the administration defends that legally?
No. And I think that the problem that we have here is that the law of war manual, which is basically the set of rules and regulations that govern how the U.S. Navy or other U.S. military conduct themselves, says that if you have the opportunity, you should actually try to rescue the survivors of a shipwreck. Instead, what happened here is the opposite. And these survivors were eliminated, were killed. And so it raises deep questions about whether a war crime was committed. Now, the reason why we have these is not just because we're nice people, but because, God forbid, Americans are in the water. You don't want them to be treated in a way that would suggest that they would be murdered. And remember, in World War II, this was kind of a common practice of the Nazis and the Japanese. We can't stoop to that level. That's not who we are as Americans. And so that's why we need to have accountability from an administration which really seeks to act almost with impunity at this point.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you look at World War II movies, and the bad guys in those movies in American films shoot at survivors in the water. As you know, Susie Wiles, the president's chief of staff, in her quite candid interview with Vanity Fair, she raised questions about the intent of military action around Venezuela, and suggested Trump was actually pursuing regime change in Venezuela via these attacks on boats as opposed to drug interdiction. Would that be a legal use of such military force to try to pressure the Maduro regime to leave office?
I don't think so. It starts to sound more like a war. And remember, the president should act in an emergency to protect the best interests of America, and he or she should be able to use the force necessary to protect America. And that is perfectly acceptable. However, in a situation such as this, where it appears that we are laying the groundwork for a war against Venezuela, you need to come to Congress. You need to get the consent of the American people. And that's where the War Powers Act came from. Remember, after Vietnam, after all the secret wars, the American people said, this is our prerogative to declare war. You must come to us. We will then deliberate through our representatives, and then you can request an authorization for the use of military force. And if it's granted, then you can take such action as necessary, flowing from that AUMF. just as we did in the past. But that's not what's happening here.
Senators from both parties said they left the briefing without a clear sense of exactly what the administration's goal is with these strikes. Did Rubio or Hegseth attempt to give any further explanation of the ultimate objective here?
Look, I can't get into the classified details, but the gist of their justification is going after narco-terrorists, being in an armed conflict with narco-terrorists. But the problem is, it seems to fly in the face of what the president did just the other day in pardoning a narco-terrorist, namely the former president of Honduras, who has caused untold harm and who was convicted in an American court of law for narco-terrorism. So what is it? Why are we there? I don't understand exactly why we're doing what we're doing. Dozens of people have been killed at this point. There have been dozens of boat strikes. And, if we're moving toward a war, come to Congress right now, because people are on both sides are very concerned.
The trouble is, though, Congress isn't doing anything about it right now. I mean, of course, granted, the Senate and the House are controlled by Republicans. But if you're saying that Republicans and many Democrats have reservations, particularly about war powers, et cetera, where's the action?
Well, War Powers Act resolutions have been introduced. I think people should now basically jump on board, especially on my colleagues on the other side, because, look, at the end of the day, President Trump, even Rand Paul said this in the Senate the other day, President Trump was somehow hired to prevent endless wars. That's what he campaigned on. But now we're about to, it appears, embark on another war in Venezuela in the name of the American people. And the American people, I can tell you, don't want that. Certainly Illinoisans and my constituents don't want that. But we need to speak up, and we need to do so with one voice.
Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi, thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Thank you so much, sir.